Hello, everybody. It's Dr. Studo Swordlow.
And Janet Diane Moria Swordlow.
And this is the Expansions News Podcast for the last week of July 2020. And I had hoped that by now all of this insanity would be finished. If you remember, back in March when the insanity began, they said, oh, by summertime when the sun is out and it's hot, the virus would die off and it would all be back to normal again. Now what do you think?
Well, what did I tell you?
You told me that I should go breathe in the coronavirus and die. That's what you told me.
I've told you since the beginning it wouldn't go away till the elections, and I'm proving myself
Well,
correct.
I think that even doesn't matter who wins because the day after is going to be worse.
I agree. It's
Not
going to
gonna
go
be
on. It's going to go on.
Because the losers are not going to be happy.
That's correct.
And they will be violent. And you know what happens when little children lose and they get angry and they throw things and stomp their feet like you do all the time.
That would be me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so it's getting a little bit much, I think, and needs to stop.
Well, everybody thinks that. Everybody's tired of all this stuff.
So again, I say to President Trump, because I know that some of his people listen to my podcast.
Maybe he himself listens.
I don't know. But I'm telling you right now that you need to be a president, executive order, national martial law, I don't care. Do something to stop it now. People are being hurt, businesses are being closed, people are losing everything they worked decades in their whole lives for, and you're letting that happen. That's not good. I don't care what the plan is, it's a bad plan. Sorry, that's how I feel about it at the moment. Okay, that's rant number one.
Maybe when he calls in all those Chinese debts, those
Oh,
businesses
China,
are
don't
gonna
get me started on China. I have a Chinese story.
I know.
You know, and you know what they told them in Houston? You go now. So now they're gone. I don't care, make fun of Chinese, they deserve it. They murdered the world.
Well, only the regime. Then the regular Chinese people are very nice.
Do you know that there's almost 100 million members of the Chinese Communist Party? It's not just a handful of people.
Yeah, but how many in the whole country?
I just told you 100 million Chinese people
Oh, I thought
belong
you
to the
said-
Communist Party.
All right, so how many, though, don't belong to the Communist Party?
1.3 billion. Well, so why don't they rise up against them?
Well, look
10
at
to
here. Look at here
over
what's
10
happening.
to 1.
Look at here what's
So
happening.
10 Chinese people should beat up each Chinese communist and kill them and get
If
rid of
you
them.
threaten violence, they will take our YouTube thing down.
Against China?
Yeah, any violence.
I saw an interesting picture today that somebody sent me. It was a comparative photo between the
I saw
protesters in Hong Kong and the protesters in Portland, Oregon. And the protesters in Hong Kong were waving American flags. And the protesters in Portland were waving Soviet flags.
I saw that.
Very interesting. So, let me tell you something. As a descendant of the Soviet Union, it's not a good thing. That's why they are no longer Soviet Union.
That's why you live here and not there.
That's why I'm living here, even though they want me to come back and beg me to come back. And if I did, they probably wouldn't let me out anymore. But I could become an emperor. I could become
have to think
emperor
about that,
of
then.
the Swordlow Union. Something to think about.
Sverdlov.
Sverdlov. Anyway, to my notes. So, guess what happened? It's really funny. The U.S. government accidentally sends a strange conspiracy theory file describing remote mind control and forced memory blanking. Where have we heard that before? That's a shock. The find was made by a reporter investigating far left and right militant groups. And this relates to your country. Washington State Fusion Center included the files in its response to his inquiry, and the person was Curtis Waltman, who's a journalist for the Boston nonprofit Muck Rock. Muck Rock, sound like Chinese food. Muck Rock, you want Muck Rock? We make right now.
I'm not going to laugh at that.
You should laugh.
No.
And I can do it because I'm part Mongolian. So, take or leave it. And this group is dedicated to helping people make Freedom of Information Act requests to government bodies, which we know is a bunch of malarkey because the freedom of they take the paper and they put black markers. So it's like, here's the word "the" on the page. Yeah, now you got the information. What do you know now? He was this Curtis Wallman was investigating Antifa and white supremacist groups, and That's when he made the discovery, because included in the material that was sent by the Washington State Fusion Center, which is part, believe it or not, of the Department of Homeland Security, and in there he found these papers that revealed research into bizarre psychoelectronic weaponry. Where have we heard this before? These claim to use electromagnetic forces to achieve their aims, including inducing intense pain, like you do to me every day, itching, and even rigor mortis, which is what dead people suffer from. They claim to use electromagnetic forces to induce a number of strange effects, including intense feelings of pain, as well as remote brain mapping. And it includes counterterrorism, detecting criminal activity, disaster planning, cybersecurity, and other threat assessments. And it also had a compressed file labeled EM effects on the human body. And they said it's entirely unclear how this ended up in this release. And it detailed a number of proposed devices, which they're not proposed, they existed a long time already, and techniques that aim to manipulate the human mind. Well, guess what? This was not an accident. This has existed since the 1970s at least, so 50-year-old technology minimum. So this was somebody who wanted the public to know what's going on. And so good that they're releasing this, and I have another story about a similar thing later on, but I think it's part of a information release plan in stepping up to the election. Now to my Chinese story. Chinese officials at the Chinese General Consulate in Houston reportedly rushed to burn classified documents this past week after learning the United States ordered them to cease all operations and events at the consulate because of security concerns. The U.S. State Department said in a statement, "We have directed the closure of PRC, People's Republic of China, Consulate General Houston, in order to protect American intellectual property and Americans' private information. The United States will not tolerate the PRC's, People's Republic of China, violations of our sovereignty and intimidation of our people, just as we have not tolerated the PRC's unfair trade practices, theft of American jobs, and other egregious behavior, like polluting the world with a virus. President Trump insists on fairness and reciprocity in U.S.-China relations." That will never happen. China called the move by the United States an unprecedented escalation. Probably said unprecedented escalation. Probably they said that. Don't look at me. And threatened to make a legitimate and necessary response if the U.S. did not immediately retract this wrong decision. Guess what? We didn't retract it, and so the Chinese closed the U.S. consulate in Chengdu. I've been to Chengdu. That's where the panda pavilion thing is. There's such cute little pandas. Too bad they're communist pandas. The DOJ and FBI announced an 11-count indictment this past week to two Chinese nationals and residents. One was Li Xiaoyu, 34, and Dong Zhishi, 33, for allegedly hacking into the computer systems of hundreds of victim companies, governments, non-governmental organizations, and individual dissidents, clergy, and democratic and human rights talking in Chinese. In the United States and abroad, including Hong Kong and China. U.S. officials said the two Chinese nationals targeted 11 nations and tried to steal research from companies developing COVID-19 vaccines, testing technology, and treatments. The news comes as Trump administration is considering banning the Chinese app TikTok, you know TikTok, from the U.S. to protect private information of America. I agree, they should ban TikTok because it might be a cute little thing that people are playing with, but it's collecting information just like Zoom. As we know, the government refuses to use Zoom meetings, especially military, because it's a Chinese invention and it's collecting everything you say on there.
I'm going to tell you, some of the TikTok challenges I've reported are not cute. They're dangerous.
They're
to people.
stupid. I've
No,
seen like what
they're,
the heck is it?
they go beyond stupid. They're dangerous.
Dangerous. Yes. Why do people do them? Because they're stupid. So, speaking of stupid, the Chinese Communist Party is a criminal entity. It's from the State Department that is pursuing a campaign of intellectual property theft, economic espionage, cyber intrusions that target businesses big and small, all across the country, and our academic research institutions, according to FBI Director Chris Wray, who we don't trust anymore anyway. And it's everything from Fortune 100 companies to startups. It's agriculture, it's high tech, it's aviation, it's healthcare, and it's academic research. Now, we had a son, we still have the son, but he used to go to University of Houston in graduate program, and there he had a very evil Chinese professor who I think was associated with this Houston consulate. And I'm glad that my son is out of Houston and this Chinese place is closed up, and maybe they get rid of that Chinese professor who was so mean to him. According to this, there's no country that presents a broader, more comprehensive threat to America's innovation, to economic security, and to our democratic ideas than China, according to the FBI director. Just to give you some context for that, just as we are sitting here having this conversation, the FBI has over 2,000 active investigations that trace back to the government of China, and that's the tip of the iceberg. China's criminal theft of American intellectual property is estimated to cost the economy over $600 billion per year. $600 billion. Listen, they need to put a wall around China, not the Mexican border. They need to put a wall around all of China and don't let Chinese people in or out, and they need to pay back every penny that they have stolen and abused from the rest of the world, and not to mention what they did with this virus scandemic, which for that they should be executed. The Chinese Communist Party. And so, the Chinese agenda, as you know, is to have economic dominance by the year 2025. That's only 5 years away. And as I think I have reported on this, they had a global agenda for complete human control by the year 2049, which is the 100th anniversary of the communist takeover of China. And they also have a secret space program, which I will talk about a little bit in a bit. Now, speaking of evil people who need to be put behind a wall.
If it's secret, how do you know those things?
Because I know secrets. Senator Bernie Sanders, that's not his real name. You know, his name is Gutman.
Something like that.
Yeah. He said that he secured half of the Senate Democrats for an amendment to defund the Pentagon and to invest in distressed communities instead. He said that the budget to invest in human needs gained support from these members of the Senate, Democrat members, and the 45 Democrats in the Senate, and also in the Congress. They did not get enough votes, thank goodness, to pass the amendment, which is part of the 2021 National Defense Authorization Act, but was just a show of support by the Democrats to destroy the United States military and police. He said, Bernie Gutman, we're going to continue building a political movement which understands that it is far more important to invest in working people, the children, the elderly, and the poor than in spending more on defense than the next 11 nations combined. So then why are you a member of a party that supports child trafficking, sexual abuse, and all kinds of horrible things, Bernie?
Black Lives Matter, violence, and rioting.
Yeah, you are working for a violent foreign organization which makes you guilty of treason, and you could be executed. Sanders' amendment was co-sponsored, remember these names, people, by the following other senators. Senators Ed Markey of Massachusetts, Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts. What the hell's going on in that's where the country began, Massachusetts, Plymouth Rock, and they're all communists. Jeff Merkley, Oregon, that's part of your country. Ron Wyden, Oregon. What the heck's going on with Massachusetts and Oregon?
Oh, and lots of violence going on.
And my favorite, Senator, the Democratic leader, Chuck Schumer, otherwise known as Schumer, from New York. he also needs to be behind bars. Sanders and Biden recently worked together. That's funny because Biden can't work. To unveil a 110-page domestic policy plan. I know Biden did not write one word of that because he can't pick up a pen. And said he's open to cutting the defense budget, according to the Washington Post, which we know is really the CIA. And after 2 decades of ground wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, the deep cuts created what is called sequestration. Sequestration means the removal or separation of the funding from the organization. And the sequestration mandated a $500 billion cut from the Pentagon's budget over 10 years, which was done by, guess who? Mr. Abomination. On top of an $800 billion planned cut during that time, there were further cuts to training and maintenance budgets, which directly affected the safety of the troops, and a Military Times investigation showed a spike in aircraft accidents because of this. Thank goodness, President Trump has increased the military budget and has put them back into a state of readiness. And Biden, Obama, Sanders, Pelosi, AOC, and all their little demonic cronies are all communist insurgents and puppets who are guilty of treason and subject to execution. And I hope they listen to my podcast too. Now, may I talk about the Pentagon?
You're actually asking my permission?
Yes, because I don't want you to use that mind control with the severe pain and all that kind of thing. The Pentagon's secretive, I put that in quotations, UFO unit is going to make some of its findings public, according to the New York Times. Now, that includes items retrieved from off-world vehicles not made on the Earth, according to. So they're finally admitting that these UFOs are not from the Earth, and that they are also admitting that they have items from them. What items do they have, perchance? Now, this is also a little humorous because the Pentagon has claimed it disbanded its UFO office, but it really changed its name and moved. Maybe they work with the Chinese government. And the Senate committee report suggests it will be expected to make information public every 6 months. So if they're saying that now, so 6 months will be January, but I think it'll be sooner than that. And some people are saying that these UFO pieces are actually advanced technology from rival nations, which I have spoken about in my seminars here that we have done. And they also hinted at possible artifacts from UFO crashes, which of course I've also written about. Astrophysicist Eric Davis, who has been a subcontractor and consultant for the Pentagon, told the Times he briefed the Defense Department in March about the off-world vehicles not made on this Earth. Listen, they knew about it decades ago, not from March. He said he has examined some of the materials and concluded we couldn't make it ourselves. But you know what? We have made it ourselves, and we have made them since the 1950s. And he didn't just tell them about this in March. This is a planned release of information that President Trump had promised he would do. Now, Senator Marco Rubio of Florida, I never thought something good would come out of Florida. He's a Republican. Also indicated that he was concerned that supposed UFOs could be advanced tech from foreign nations. Well, they're both. They're from foreign nations and from outer space. And he said, we have things flying over our military bases and places where we're conducting military exercises, and we don't know what it is, and it isn't ours. Well, they do know what it is. He added, I would say that frankly, that if it's something from outside this planet, that might actually be better than the fact that we might see some technology from China. I agree with you, Senator Rubio. Or the Russians and other adversaries that allow them this sort of activity, like the Fourth Reich from Antarctica. That's what most of them are. So it's all much more complicated than that. US, Russia, China, they have vehicles equal to anything that the UFOs, and of course the Fourth Reich has even more than that, and they have since the 1930s. There is a secret space program that has existed in the United States, in Russia, in China, in Germany, for 70 plus years. Now, did I say something about Oh, you wanted to talk about that story, didn't you?
About what?
What I just talked about.
It doesn't matter because we both have the same stories.
Oh,
That's fine.
well then let me tell you something where you have come up, Missy.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. Huge Kingdom of Judah government complex was found near the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem. Here again, this is something they've known about. Now they're releasing it for a reason. It's a 2,700-year-old find with 120 inscribed seal impressions on jars at a storage facility holding food, which was collected as taxes for Kings Hezekiah, Menashe in the First Temple times. And it's being excavated near the new United States Embassy in Jerusalem. These items have served as an administrative center during the reigns of Judean kings from about 800 BC to 700 BC. And on them is an inscription which in English would translate LMLK, not Martin Luther King, it's kind of something. No, it's called Lam Melech, or belonging to the king. And here's where you come in. The ongoing salvage excavations in Jerusalem's Arnona neighborhood are conducted by the Israel Antiquities Authorities and funded by Israel Land Authority and administrated by the Moria Jerusalem Development Corporation. Moria. Probably Moriah. I knew that you were some kind of a Israeli spy. Anyway, some of the figurines are designed in the form of women. Maybe Janet? Paradise? A statue of Paradise from Moria? And they were horse riders or as animals. These figurines are usually interpreted as objects used in pagan worship and idolatry, a phenomenon which, according to the Bible, was prevalent in the Kingdom of Judah, which is the replay of today. I remember in my book I told you that the Kingdom of Judah was infiltrated by Jezebel, who we know now as Hillary Clinton.
Is that one in this one, King B?
Yes. Yes, I think so. And I will tell you that history is replaying itself. All this is being released on purpose. These are not accidental release of information. What I found also interesting, what you would find interesting, is that around there are artificial stone hills, which have been identified at several sites in Jerusalem and are a phenomena of the First Temple period, have aroused the curiosity and fascination of Jerusalem researchers since the beginning of research in the area. They have made who built them made a huge effort made in stacking them over many acres, and remains an unresolved archaeological mystery.
Which they're not telling us, which they know, obviously.
Obviously, burying something of importance like the pyramids that we saw in Europe, which were covered up by earth and rock and blah, blah, blah.
What?
Yeah, I didn't do too much because I was so frustrated
I have
with
quite
what's
a
going
bit.
on.
So you'll have to let me know what you think of some of these stories.
will.
Because I'm just continuing to update you on the things that have been going on around the world, and of course here in the U.S. Black Lives Matter. Seattle council member calls on the police chief to fire the white policemen or police officers first.
Of course.
The chief
That's not racist.
said it's illegal. City council member Lisa Herbold talked about defunding the police department by 50%, which would therefore see several hundred officers terminated. However, she's more concerned that only white officers be terminated. But that's an issue apparently for the police chief.
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit, because the police chief, who is black, a very lovely black woman, said that it's illegal.
Why do all these black women have these mayors and
I don't
all
know.
the,
It says, this woman wrote to the city council person, in the case of layoffs are necessary, one threat is firing. This is a new term, BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and People of Color.
We all have a color.
I know,
told
it
you
makes
that.
no sense. So anyway, she wants, the chief can request that the chief can request that the Public Safety Civil Service Commission lay off out of order when doing so is in the interest of efficient operations of his or her department. The police chief, Carmen Best, does not share the same opinion of the city council member who believes in terminating white officers merely because of the color of their skin.
That's reverse discrimination.
Well, it's total discrimination, period.
It's also complete racism.
In a letter and video created by the chief, Best, she outlines many services which will have to be cut in order to maintain staffing levels in the patrol division. This includes disbanding their Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. Gee, I wonder who would want that disbanded. Drug investigations, traffic units, Marine units, SWAT teams, and many other significant reductions. Perhaps the unarmed mental health professionals they plan to dispatch in place of officers can carry the load.
Yeah.
Now, the police chief, Carmen Best, said she will not ask her officers to deal with riots limited only to your sidearm, baton, and body as tools.
And that's why President Trump is sending 60,000 troops into these cities to stop this moronic insanity.
She blasted the council's decision, called it unreasonable, and there was no input from the police department itself. And down in Portland, Oregon, the Portland Fire and Rescue Commissioner, Joanne Hardesty, another black woman, has banned all law enforcement agencies, federal and local, from using any of their 31 stations to prepare for tactical operations.
Yeah, good luck with that, Missy, because it's not going to work.
She also demanded that the Portland mayor give her command of the city's police force.
Of course.
And she currently oversees 3 bureaus: Portland Fire and Rescue, the Portland Bureau of Emergency Management, and the Bureau of Emergency
Well,
Communications.
those morons might do it.
Which I think is very scary.
Yeah.
Now,
If I lived in Portland, I'd get the frick out right now.
because speaking of which, there are people who have launched a petition to create Greater Idaho. Rural Oregon citizens who are distressed by the civil unrest in Portland and other urban cities have formed a coalition in rural counties and actually gotten this place on the ballot. They want to have Oregon's borders moved or Idaho's borders moved, depending upon.
I think they just cut Oregon out and push it out into the ocean.
But what's interesting is they're calling it "Let Us Go." So doesn't that sound like?
Let my people go.
Yeah. So
There's that Red Sea thing again.
yes, they have lost faith in Oregon's leadership. Let us move to Idaho, or let Idaho move to us. They're talking about 2 phases. So in the second phase, they actually want counties in Northern California to join them.
Ooh.
And they said that right now they've tried voting, but because of their numbers, that they can't outvote what's happening in the cities. So one of the organizers said rural counties have become increasingly outraged by laws coming out of the Oregon legislature that threaten our livelihoods, our industries, our wallet, our gun rights, and our values. We tried voting these legislators out, but rural Oregon is outnumbered. Our voices are now ignored, and this is our last resort.
Good. You know what?
Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
And in Chicago, closer to home, apparently murders are up 80% in Chicago
What a
as
shock.
of last month.
That little twerk mayor.
Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot, a Democrat, blames guns when asked about the
Oh,
rise in violence.
Shootings? I blame them on guns.
Yeah.
She's brilliant.
And the Fraternal Order of Police President John Catanzara shifted some of the blame to local officials, including Lightfoot, for criticizing police and making it harder for them to do their jobs.
She's a little twerp.
So he has asked the president to send in troops and help save them, and he called the mayor
Good.
a complete failure.
She is a failure, and the troops are coming.
Now listen to this. White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany accused Lightfoot of not doing enough to tackle gun violence in Chicago and actually called her a derelict mayor.
She is.
So Lightfoot
Yes.
fired back on Twitter. Now listen to this. If she's a black woman, and if a white woman had said this against her, we'd have again a racial
Right,
thing. But as a
right.
black woman, now she's saying to a white woman, "Hey Karen, watch your mouth."
Yeah, right.
Karen has become a stereotypical name to refer to rude and self-entitled middle-aged white women.
Well, I don't think McEnany's middle-aged.
It
She's
doesn't.
kinda young.
It doesn't matter. This is what a Karen is defined as, according to this article.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter. That's what she's
That
calling
means you
her,
could be a Karen.
which is a derogatory term for a white female. Let's say that. But that's according to this article. This is what their words were.
I know.
Okay. So neither she nor the ACLU has any say over whether or not DHS personnel show up in Chicago, because they have offices there at federal buildings that are not under her control. The president cannot tell the Chicago Police Department what to do, and the mayor cannot boss around the Department of Homeland Security.
So then what happens?
Well, they're going in, period. Now listen to this one you will love, because this, again, closer to home, Detroit.
Well, actually, we're closer to Chicago.
Are we closer? Well, we're in the States, so. Rasheda Tlaib warns feds will have to arrest her if they set foot in Detroit.
Good. Do it. Arrest her.
So she wrote on Twitter, listen to this one.
And deport her.
They'll have to arrest me first if they think they're going to illegally lay their hands on my residence. What does she mean, my residence?
Listen, Rasheda. You need to go back to the West Bank and see what that life is like.
Yeah. Now, Minnesota Attorney...
Another one. Somalisota.
Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison wants to know why police carry guns, and he wants to get rid of the word police.
Wait, he wants to know why police carry guns?
Yep.
Really?
Yeah. Then this is their attorney.
Does he also want to wear skies
This
blue?
is Minnesota Attorney General, so very sad for
God.
Minnesota.
Minnesota is a big disappointment to the earth.
Yeah, he's a former U.S. congressman. He's calling for a new approach to policing. However, according to statistics by Law Enforcement Today and a numerous Bureau of Justice statistics data sets, the reality is that police rarely ever use force, let alone lethal force, during encounters with the public. But this is not stopping Ellison from misleading the idea that there's a huge epidemic of lethal force and the police are looking to kill people, so they're setting the police up.
Yeah, how about the Somali policeman who killed that Australian woman who was asking for help? How about that
Well,
one?
there's a lot of bad things that happen
One
here.
of Omar's people.
Now, here this even gets more interesting. Remember, Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison, guess what? His son, the first part of June, Jeremiah Ellison declared his support for Antifa after President Donald Trump announced that the U.S. declares the radical far-left group a terrorist organization.
You know what?
And
Then they
this
should
is his
arrest
son.
him and his father.
And Fox News contributor Trey Gowdy says if you don't want federal officers in your cities, stop violating federal laws.
Right.
Now, Minnesota, I'm sorry, I'm just so disappointed, really disappointed.
It's disgusting. What happened to my Scandinavian people
I
there?
know. Minnesota is planning permanent memorial honoring George Floyd.
Who actually did not die and was a severe criminal.
The city has received $50,000 grant to build a memorial and preserve the ones already in place. And apparently now, again, we're talking about a waste of resources and time. Besides the $50,000, Minneapolis has more than 40 listening sessions. They've had more than 40 listening sessions with community members on how best to honor Floyd. They don't want to know how I want to honor him.
Yeah, I'll tell them.
Officials might also name a street or community center after Floyd, as well as erect a memorial plaque.
Why don't they name it after Hitler and Stalin, too?
And guess what? The family has an official George Floyd Memorial Fund that has raised almost $15 million.
Yeah, who's getting that?
They need to give this to all the people who
Who
were
were killed
ruined.
and destroyed by your riots.
Yep. In Berkeley, California, City Council, they approved a measure to eliminate the police from conducting traffic stops, and instead they plan to send unarmed civilian city workers in their place.
You know, all these communists need to look at China, Cuba, and other communist countries where police are really, really strong, and you step out of line, you're not going home.
Yeah. In its place, the council is planning to call this unarmed community safety coalition the Specialized Care Unit, with money that would go to the police department. Police unions in LA, San Francisco, and San Jose issued a joint statement noting that reckless driving, speeding, and driving while under the influence are examples of traffic enforcement violations that could turn dangerous. Traffic stops are some of the most dangerous actions police officers take. What happens when the felon with an illegal gun gets pulled over by the parking police? Nothing good, we're sure of that. So this is just waiting to happen. And here in Michigan, the governor has defunded our police. She's cut $115 million from the state police, and she wants to replace it with a portion from federal cash. She's also slashed almost $400 million from the Department of Corrections and $36 million from the Department of Health and Human Services.
Let me say something about the Witchmer. Okay,
I like that one. That's the
She's
best
a
one so far.
Witchmer. She has murdered more people than all the serial killers in the United States combined. She's a murderer. She committed treason, and she needs to be in jail.
Now, apparently, again, as I said earlier, she plans to replace only, of all this money she's cutting, $107 million with funds from the federal coronavirus stimulus bill. I'm not sure that's what that's for, But what happens is once that money is gone, then the taxpayers are going to be left with all these things defunded. And in order to fill that, we're going to have to raise taxes or do other things.
That Witchburg thinks she's going to be vice president
It's not a pretty picture.
Biden, but he can't even spell his name.
Not a pretty picture here.
No.
And now this is also disappointing. The U.S. Conference of Mayors, released a letter backing a Democratic plan to form Reparations Commission to come up with a payment for slavery. Apparently, they wanted this commission to study and develop reparation proposals for African Americans Act. Now, not just only Africans were slaves, and there were many blacks that owned slaves, which according to the U.S. Census rolls, you can go see for yourself. So it wasn't just white people. So, but the U.S. Conference of Mayors has approved this. The study suggests a payment, get this, of $151 million to each descendant of the slaves. And the cost to every person would only be $19 million. So, between the two of us, we could all write a check,
We just write a check right now.
Yeah. So this study, which was actually published.
Do these people have more than 2 brain cells in their heads?
These are senators. They published last month in the Review of Black Political Economy an article titled Wealth Implications of Slavery and Racial Discrimination for African American Descendants of the Enslaved. So remember, some of the people enslaving the African Americans were African Americans. And not only that, how many white people fought, and all kinds of people fought, including blacks, just to free the slaves. So how about reparations for the soldiers that died? And what are you doing? They're tearing down their war monuments.
They're tearing down statues of people that supported the freedom.
Yes.
They're stupid. They don't even know what they're doing, these morons.
Yes, and here's another story for you. 2 people that you absolutely love. One is Nancy Pelosi, and the other is...
You know that she's 80 already? She needs to go back to her coffin.
And from Minnesota, Ilhan Omar. And Ilhan Omar, who has perpetuated anti-Semitic tropes and introduced a resolution in Congress that promotes boycotts of Israel, likening them to boycotts of Nazi Germany. So now, Omar's
I want her to take
campaign
her hat off.
has said that the Congresswoman now has the support of the Democratic leaders of both the U.S. House of Representatives and the Minnesota legislature. That's very sad.
Yes, disgusting.
And this one, and this I actually learned something because I didn't know, and I'm sure you do because you know history better than I do. The Conference of Jewish Affairs has called the use of the term Stormtroopers by House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Democrat California, in reference to federal officers sent to Portland to quell violent protests in the city offensive to Jews across the world. Nancy Pelosi's deliberate use of the term Stormtroopers to describe America's Homeland Security officers quelling riots and protecting people in Portland is a vile accusation against our good officers and offensive to Jews across the world, Rabbi Aryeh Sparrow said. Speaker Pelosi must know that the Stormtroopers were Hitler's private regiment to round up innocent Jews and ship them off to concentration camps. The rabbi joins a growing list of people who have criticized Pelosi's use of the term, including Customs and Border Patrol Commissioner Mark Morgan and DHS head Chad Wolf. And it says, and Chad Wolf said, over the last few years, Speaker Pelosi's language has become dangerous. Oh no, this is from the rabbi. Over the last few years, Speaker Pelosi's language has become dangerous, exploitative, and is designed to incite anger and perhaps violence within segments of our population. Her temperament has become too off the wall for someone so close to the presidency.
She can never be president. And the military said that if that, God forbid, ever happened, they would block her from ever taking that position.
And Twitter, this again, what's happening in our country is just terrible. Twitter is now banning the Star of David image as hateful. And it's locking the account users who display the Star of David in their profile image or header. And apparently, the London-based nonprofit Campaign Against Anti-Semitism has had several reports from Twitter users. They're being told that by Twitter, quote, you may not use hateful images or symbols in your profile image or profile header. As a result, we have locked your account, and they're using the Star of David. And not only that, Twitter's allowing hashtag Jewish privilege with a lot, and they quoted in this article, I'm not telling you what they are because what they said was really horrible about Jewish people. That they're allowing, but they won't allow the Star of David.
We know what Twitter is.
Yeah.
That should be also eliminated from the internet.
Along with TikTok.
Yes.
Biden wishes school districts taught more about Islam. He received endorsements from several Muslim American leaders before addressing the Million Muslim
He
Voices
probably
Summit
doesn't
last
even know
week.
what it is.
He opened his speech by saying, "I wish we were taught more in our schools about the Islamic faith, one of the great confessional faiths," which we are not even allowed to teach Christianity in our schools unless
Right.
you're in a private school. So
Right.
why Islam? No,
Or
I'm
anything
sorry.
else.
Now this was a very long article. I just took a few salient points because it was very good, and I kind of broached this last week. A man named Tom Basile with a huge, long Republican bio. But he claims, long story short, and I talked about this last week, that Pelosi and the Democrats are abandoning their oaths of office and the Constitution because they swore to uphold this, and they're not doing that.
Because they're communists.
So he's going. It's a lengthy article which I'm not going into, but if you have a chance, read it. But basically, what he says, if the oath, which demands fidelity to our Constitution, is no longer a standard Democrats are willing to follow, then we are barreling toward a clash unlike anything we've seen since the Civil War. Every American should treat officials who violate their oaths as requiring censure, recall, or removal. Extraordinary measures are truly necessary when the Constitution is so brazenly disrespected.
And that's why I said, where are you, President Trump? You're the president. You should not be allowing these things to happen.
That's a terrible, terrible thing. In California, by the end of August, do you realize California, only one state, a total of 18,000 prison inmates will have been released? And guess what? The secretary of the agency, Ralph Diaz, wrote a letter of apology to the criminals for the significant burden you and your families continue to bear. Now, Governor Gavin Newsom
New scum is right.
ordered all the residents
This
to
old
wear
scum.
masks and face coverings, but guess what? It doesn't include the prison inmates.
Or his wine tasting room.
Yes. So, it's crazy. And in Washington, D.C., Mayor Muriel Bowser
Ugh.
issued a universal masking order for her city, but exempted lawmakers and judges and federal employees.
Yeah,
so
because
that
the
makes no
coronavirus
sense.
wouldn't jump on that.
I guess not. They must have a sign or something.
Yeah.
So, and if you ignore it, then supposedly you're going to be fined up to $1,000.
They should fine her $1 billion and put her in chains.
Indiana makes not wearing a mask a Class B misdemeanor punishable by 6 months in jail beginning July 27. This mandate requires everyone over the age of 8 to cover their faces in all outdoor spaces, public transport, blah, blah. It goes on and on and on. However, Attorney General Curtis Hill said that the governor should call a special legislative session to consider a statewide mask mandate rather than issuing an executive order. He said this is not about the wisdom of wearing masks. The issue is whether or not we are following the proper and constitutional processes for enacting laws and whether we are respecting the distinct roles of each branch of state government.
And I'm just going to say, and we confirmed this with our senators, that this is not a law. It is an executive order which the governors do not have the authority to issue, and it is against the Constitution of the United States and is actually illegal.
Yeah, Indiana's Attorney General believes the governor has overstepped his authority in issuing a statewide face mask mandate and that only the legislature can make violations a criminal offense.
And here's the thing. When these governors, in the beginning of all this insanity, issued these executive orders, by law, they only had 28 days
Yes.
to enact these mandates. After 28 days, they have no more authority to do this unless their entire state legislature approves it and votes on it, which they did not.
And these states continue to overstep.
People need to know the law.
Yes. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis says he's concerned about the inaccuracy of COVID-19 tests because guess what? There are a lot of people in his state who never got tested.
And yeah.
And they got letters sent in the mail saying
Right.
they were tested positive.
And I don't know if I said this last week, but there were these nurses who sent in
Yeah, you
10
did say that.
tests. No sample came back positive.
Yeah, according to this, these people were in line for the COVID test, so they filled out the paperwork, but then they decide they didn't want to wait in line for so long, so they left.
Mm-hmm.
So they still
That
got.
tells you how fraudulent this whole thing is.
Yes. And
speaking of fraudulent, those mail-in votes, we have a friend in the town across the river from here who received a mail-in ballot from someone who's dead
like 16 years or
a
something.
long time ago. That person is allowed to vote, apparently, from the grave.
Apparently. And guess what? Disney banned eating and drinking while walking to make sure you wear your mask.
Oh.
And many airlines are now banning food, drink, alcohol
You know
on
what?
their longer flights, so that means you can't take your mask off to eat.
So if you have a 15-hour flight, you're not allowed to eat or drink.
Well, that's why I said this stuff is crazy.
I hope all airlines go out of business. I really do.
They're on their way. And in New York, Governor Cuomo made it, well, let's put it this way. He said because in order to sell alcohol like the bars, they have to sell food, but you can't call a bag of chips food in order to buy
It
an
is
alcoholic
food.
drink.
It's still food.
That's
you
what he
put it in your
claims.
mouth, it's food.
But it gets worse. And back to California, California bars. Now they've also decided what you have to have a meal with your alcoholic drink.
Mm-hmm.
So California says these are not meals. So wings, cheese sticks, calamari, fries, sandwiches, and salads are not a meal.
Oh, I love them.
So if you go to a bar, you can't order that and call it a meal. So I mean,
What do you call it?
I don't know. It's just crazy. Back to California again. Now we talked about them closing the churches, right? So this is another lawsuit. I talked about one last week. A California church filed a federal lawsuit challenging the state's restrictions on houses of worship because the suit says it's a ban on in-home Bible studies because apparently the governor's orders prohibit them from leaving their homes to go to Bible study. The lawsuit asked the court to overturn the state's restrictions on churches, arguing the governor has imposed an unconscionable and unconstitutional burden on the plaintiff's religious exercise.
And so if they had a mosque and they were going to the mosque, that would be legal because you can't infringe on Islamic rights.
The governor is not the high priest over all religions.
That's right.
Governor Newsom encourages
Old scum.
thousands of protesters to gather in the streets but bans in-person worship and home Bible studies and fellowship. The discriminatory treatment is unconstitutional.
People in California, I want you to go to church, sing your hearts out, and
have
clap
Bible studies.
And Bible study right out there, and doors open, and let them all hear it, and screw them all.
Okay, I found a state we may want to move to. This is Missouri.
Misery.
And the governor, Mike Parson, caused a stir because he says kids have to go back to school, and if they do get COVID, which they will, they're going to go home and they're going to get over it. End of story.
Because it's not more than a cold.
And that's what should have been done in the first place, not shut everything down.
Right.
Now, speaking of COVID going away, Trump says he'll be right eventually after predicting several times that coronavirus will just disappear.
I'm waiting.
Fox News Sunday host Chris Wallace suggested that this discredits the president, but Trump pushed back, saying, "I've been right probably more than anybody else." And then Trump goes on to say that he prefers therapeutics over vaccines.
I agree.
He says, "I think we can knock it out before it disappears.
Yeah.
If I had my choice between vaccines or therapeutics, give me therapeutics. Because I'd love to walk into a hospital and give everybody something and they start walking out in 2 days."
Yes, and please, people, watch my video that I posted about the Gates vaccine.
Okay, that's on the member side. The Trump administration, and I'm going to say this is good, so listen before you comment, because the Trump administration is trying to block a $25 billion contract tracing and COVID testing. We don't need contact tracing. We don't need to spend $25 billion.
Right.
We need to help the homeless and the poor people and those people without
We
food.
need to have the businesses that have been destroyed.
Yes, and so I'm glad he's blocking. He's trying to block it. The Democrats are trying to push it through in the next stimulus package.
Idiots.
And Trump also signed orders to lower prescription drug prices.
Yes.
Which is bankrupts a lot of families here in the U.S.
Hydroxychloroquine costs less than $1.
But this is for all prescription drugs, including insulin and things that here they charge so much for. It's ridiculous. It costs pennies to make, and people are
Right.
suffering and dying
Right,
as a
exactly.
result.
Not $1,000 pills.
And 25% of CDC COVID test kits are inaccurate, a recent study showed. So, which I kind of told you, and even if you're tested by a doctor, it's wrong. And we have discussed between the two of us about FDA expanding their list of dangerous hand sanitizers. We're telling you
Right.
about that. So they've recently expanded it to include 75 different brands of hand sanitizers. How long have you been using hand sanitizers out there?
Killing your liver, your kidneys, your brain.
Well, it's worse than that. Even many of them under the brand Bloomin, apparently. It says in Arizona alone, in only 2 months, 4 people died, 26 were injured that were believed related to hand sanitizers that contain methanol, according to Arizona Poison and Drug Information. Now, initial symptoms can include headache, nausea, and dizziness. More acute symptoms include blindness and death.
Oh, that's not good.
Now, what I want to tell you is the FDA. This is the FDA. So when you go into a place, and this has happened to me, and they want me to use a hand sanitizer, and I said I won't use it, but you can watch me wash my hands in soap and water. And there's not much they could say to that. The FDA recommends people turn to hand washing first and only use hand sanitizers if soap and water are not available. That's the first thing I want you to be aware of. The second thing is guess what? There are no FDA approved hand sanitizers.
That's interesting.
It's very interesting. So if your hand sanitizer says it's FDA approved,
That's a lie.
That's a lie. So you can look it up online, but do not use hand sanitizers washed with soap and water. And guess what? Here in Michigan, there's another lawsuit. Supreme Court, the Michigan Supreme Court, has a new brief in a case that could take away the governor's emergency powers.
Good.
With oral argument set for September 2.
Oh, it's too late.
The Mackinac Center Legal Foundation filed this brief that could result in Governor, Whitmer losing the unilateral emergency powers she has exercised by issuing coronavirus epidemic executive orders.
Illegally.
The case, which was filed on behalf, this was interesting, it's filed on behalf of several healthcare providers and facilities. The case said it's not about actually the COVID-19 epidemic, it's about the nature of Michigan's government, about whether the executive branch may displace Michigan's legislature and continue to indefinitely extend and exercise its immensely broad emergency powers throughout the entire of the I call it pandemic that has no clear end in sight. And so this is what a lot of people now are going to court, and they are suing because they're saying that this is out of control and they are usurping the rights of the people, and they're becoming dictators.
But they need to get an injunction to stop the orders while the trial is about to occur, because otherwise it takes too long.
It is taking very long. Parents, as many of you are out there, are beginning to wonder about what's going to happen in the academic year. I told you about the state of Missouri, so that's a place to go. Mm-hmm. But some of them, unfortunately, can't move. So they're beginning to form groups because they don't want their kids going back wearing face masks and all kinds of crap that's going on. So just so that you know, this is also a very interesting article. It's very long. You can look it up in my links. But it said that families are banding together to hire teachers or somebody to help and to form a co-op.
That's a good idea.
Yes.
Have your own school.
It was saying that we do know that there are virtual options being offered, but for some parents, they don't have the internet. Some parents have children with disabilities that can't use it. And even something which I never even thought about, sometimes, let's say you've got two parents working out of your house, you've got, anywhere from one to more kids, and some people have several children, they all need a device to work from at the same time.
Right.
So this is a problem for people. So like I said, look at my link because there's lots of good information on there. Isolation programming. Now this, I told you when this happened in Michigan that in Lansing, the swingers clubs were left open. That was considered essential, but you couldn't get your hair cut, you couldn't go to the barber, everything else was closed down. You couldn't do anything, you could go to the swingers club. In BC, the BC CDC, this is Canada, British Columbia, they're telling people to use glory holes for safe sex.
So drill a hole in your wall.
That's what they said. They actually said that. Glory holes are typically used for anonymous oral or penetrative sex, but they're an excellent way to limit physical contact during intercourse, the CDC of British Columbia said.
So in your own home.
Yes, they said use barriers like walls. Like walls.
This is why Canada is not a major world
that allow for sexual contact but prevent close face-to-face contact.
Canada, seriously?
It gets worse because guess what? New York City health officials also hinted it. They have a recent 3-page document without naming them, but they said be creative with sexual positions and physical barriers like walls that will allow sexual contact while preventing close face-to-face contact. And then the CDC back to Canada says you're your safest sex partner. They want you to masturbate so you won't spread it. And then they want you to be in the same room as your partner but not touch and masturbate together, but in the same room, or I guess go to the glory hole thing, or have virtual sex. So they're promoting horrible things. They're taking away your humanity and your connection to other people. It's terrible. And they're promoting swinger clubs.
Why do you let these things happen, people? You need to
Yes.
resist this.
Absolutely.
This
Say
is
no
your
to
life
mind
or
control.
death.
And in a recent interview, Lady Colin Campbell, who's a cousin of Prince Andrew,
Oh, what could
claims
be wrong with that?
on Good Morning Britain interview that soliciting sex from minors is not the same as pedophilia.
It's not.
She said there's a difference between
What
hiring.
is it?
She says there's a difference between hiring sex from a minor and a pedophile. It's ridiculous.
Really?
And yes, that's what she said. That's what our society is going to. Now,
This
I
is why the
told you-
royal family will disappear soon.
Yes, I told you about the man that they arrested in Italy last week who was running all these darknet pornographic sites. Well, guess what? Now in Italy, only 30 miles from Milan, a 77-year-old man who's known only as the Doctor,
I heard
who
about it.
tortured and sexually abused female slaves for 30 years.
And nobody said a word.
Nobody said a word. This little town in Italy. Anyway, so he's finally been arrested, thank God.
After 30 years of abuse.
Yes, it's terrible. And now this one, this is why I'm telling you, this stuff is definitely demon stuff. This is horrible. A Kentucky mom, a mother, 26 years old. She produced child porn. It practically makes me want to cry. For her 9-month-old child. And sold it
I
on
hope
the
they burn her
internet.
alive. She should be burnt
Well,
alive.
she said that she had been abused as a child. She'd been viewing child porn since she was a teenager, and she wanted.
That's
to
not
stop.
an excuse to abuse
It's a
others.
terrible thing. This is a young female mother making pornography with
What
her
happened
children.
to the child?
Doesn't say. The 9 months to a year and a half,
I hope they took it away
and
from
also
her.
children 3 to 4. Hopefully they did. But this is what I'm telling you is going on in our country. It's horrible. We
It's
need.
happened. The world, the whole world.
The whole world is
The world
horrible.
is sick. You're sick human beings.
Allie Wentworth, who runs she's some kind of author. She's the wife of George Stephanopoulos, has 2 children, 17 and 15, says that parents should watch pornography with their children.
Oh my God.
And she's spoken extensively and very uncandidly about her sex life with her husband. It's just none of anybody's
Who
business.
cares?
It's none of anybody's business. In Australia, they're pushing to rename body parts that have been named after men, kings, and gods, such as the Adam's apple and the Achilles tendon.
Uh-huh.
The students that go to medical school are still required to know the eponyms, which is the person, place, or thing after which something is named. But there are several hundred eponyms in human anatomy, and only 9 that are named after a female. So these are the types of nail names, things that need to be changed. Fallopian tubes, pouch of Douglas, Bartholomew's glands are all named after male anatomists. This is silly.
It's stupid.
Now this guy, he wrote a book, Frank Ferretti, who's called Why Borders Matter, Why Humanity Must Relearn the Art of Drawing Boundaries. Now, we speak extensively on our blogs about boundaries and your energy and all those kind of things which we teach in our books, on our blogs, on our website, membership site, expansions.com. But this guy, again, very lengthy. So I'm just going to sum it up for you. But he just said everything that I believe in. He said the bonds that hold society together are breaking. The boundaries that separate adults from children, men from women, humans from animals, and private from public lives are being eroded. And throughout history, we have boundaries that have played a major role in communities making moral distinctions between right and wrong, and now those distinctions are blurred. And there's a reason why we use the phrase crossing the line, because it signals that someone has violated society's accepted moral code. Because borders are not just about physical boundaries. In the absence of clear signposts, everyone, adolescents and adults alike, become confused, and parents and teachers are no longer know their roles, so they go out of their way to become the young people's friends rather than guides or mentors. And he uses this example at the University of Canberra in Australia for students, college-age students, if they're having pre-exam stress. That at this university they have a petting zoo, bubble wrap popping, balloon bursting, and a session titled, How Can You Be Stressed When You Pat a Goat? He said that another area of society where boundaries are being broken down when they have existed for millennia are gender. No longer are the sexes differentiated by anatomy and reproductive functions. And yes, a tiny percentage of the population have the anatomical characteristics of both sexes, but the majority of people do not. So consequently, the boundary between men and women is frequently depicted as artificial, oppressive, and those who transgress it are celebrated as inspirational role models. He said one of the most significant developments of the boundaryless movement has been its success in undermining the traditional separation between what is considered public and what is private. So, again, read our work because this is ridiculous. Now, this I thought was a very interesting proposal. Speaking of what's going on with China, so we're kind of switching topics here. U.S. Senator Mark Warner has proposed legislation to make India a permanent strategic defense partner of Washington.
I thought it was.
Warner said that the partnership between India and the U.S. is important because of the growing threat of Chinese surveillance and concern of intellectual theft by Chinese companies. Warner added that the U.S. will work with companies like Japan, South Korea, and India to counter that threat. Members of the UN-India Security Council endorsed Warner's ideas and said that it would make a better sense in the present scenario as China's growing ambitions in the South China Sea and the Himalayas are a threat to everyone, and that it could look towards the U.S. in the future. Indian-American Ramesh Kapoor told the U.S.-India Security Council that the U.S. should look to move its companies out of China and small and medium American businesses move to India because they require labor and there's an issue of cost. And all members agreed that friendly countries should work together to counter the reigning threat from China. So they're going to partner up with India now because they have the manpower, the land, and the human people that we need. Kanye West, which I talked to you about.
I'm going to vote for him, I think.
About his presidential run and on and off. We're not sure exactly what's going on with him, but apparently he claimed that Michael Jackson was murdered after speaking out against Sony boss Tommy Mottola in another late night Twitter tirade. And guess who won? Now, I read that he had already picked his vice president, but Kanye.
He did?
Yeah, I reported on that last week if you were listening. It was
No,
somebody from
I wasn't
Wyoming. Now, guess who wants to be his vice president? His ex-mother-in-law, I guess, Caitlyn Jenner.
Really?
Yeah, she said that she texted him and said, "Can I be your vice president?" He's 17 years old.
Right.
Now, also on the royal front, just interesting tidbit here, that Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's Sussex Royal Charity and Prince William and Kate Middleton's Royal Foundation to Charity Commission, they're saying there's conflicts of interest and that there's been a misappropriation of funds.
Well, you think.
So let's see what happens with that one.
I also read today that Harry and Meghan were jealous of Kate and William.
Yeah, that's been going on for a long time. And then, of course, I have my alien and off-world stories that giant Martian lava caves could be the prime location to find alien life because the enormous caves left behind in the aftermath of lava flows could be havens for alien life forms on other planets that took refuge there. So they're kind of saying that maybe they're still there.
They are.
And they said right now, for example, on Mars, they gave is now an arid, oxygen-deprived, radiation-saturated wasteland.
Not true.
It was once wet and warm and may have hosted life. So
it still does.
So beings that managed to migrate to the underground caverns may have managed to survive on the red planet.
Both are. They're on top and underneath.
And because if they find it there, they're going to go, oh, maybe we should investigate our own lava tubes. Remember your experience in Iceland and other places in the lava tubes?
I was sent into a lava tube.
Yes, so we found evidence of alien life in lava tubes ourselves, so to speak.
Yeah, I was the alien life in that lava tube.
So we have lots of things about those stories. But anyway, lava tubes. Then, astronomers have discovered 4 mysterious objects that appear to be circular and brighter along the edges, according to a recent study. Now here's the interesting part, amongst other things. These are being called odd radial circles, or ORCS, ORCS for short. Now does that orc mean anything to you?
Yeah, it sounds like from the
Lord of the Rings?
Yeah, Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings, that's what they call the army of the
I think
evil
Nancy
guy.
Pelosi is an orc.
The army of the evil guy. The Lord started with an
Dark
S.
Lord.
Yes, it started with an S, but I can't think of what his name is. Soros or something.
Soros, yeah, that was his name, Soros.
So they're calling them orcs for short. And after ruling out objects like supernovas, planetary nebulas, star-forming galaxies, the astronomers speculated that the mysterious figures could represent a spherical shockwave from an galactic event, or from a radio galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
And last story. Last but not least, did you hear about the alien cube ship?
Yes, I wanted to talk about
Well, do you want to talk about
I
that?
think it's my peeps
You
coming
think
to
so?
me. I've been, sending radio messages, get me off of here.
Yeah. Now, apparently, this was taken by NASA, and of course, all the conspiracy theorists, alien
Yes.
people start talking about it.
Right.
But they're claiming that, according to the dimensions, that this thing would have to be 39,580 miles.
It's 10 times larger than Earth.
Yes, if it was true. But according to a previous NASA engineer, that says most UF sightings are nothing far more than space standard
Right.
floating in the entrance of cameras.
Right. Of course, and we should believe everything NASA said, just like we should believe everything that CDC and the WHO says.
So do you think it's an alien ship?
I know it's an alien ship. It's a cube. It's not the Borg, but it's something like the Borg.
Yeah, very interesting.
And I'm gonna make sure they come and get me.
Okay, Montauk, the Alien Connection, Stewart's autobiography, which I'm in there as well. And if you want to know true history, true world history, humanity's saga. And this one is like a classic, Blue Blood, True Blood, Conflict and Creation, Galactic History. So this is a great group of books. If you want to know the true world history, which is being hidden in front of your eyes, as well as this collection, which goes back even further into ancient times. So this is excellent. We have a Say No to Mind Control. We have Health and Healing. We have so many different ones that I can't show you all of them, but they're there. Go to the website, check out the books, get your membership, because if you like what we are saying here, we are on our blogs 24/7 practically, and we will be communicating with you. So get your membership, expansions.com. Less than $1 a day.
Okay, a reminder that the end of August I will be at the North American Space Summit, and guess who I'll be meeting there?
Who?
The next Prime Minister of Canada.
Wow.
And I cannot tell you his name, but
I hope it's not Trudeau.
No, he's the ex-prime minister who's under house arrest and should be executed.
Well, as long
And
as
should
we
be. He's a
know.
pedophile, and he also did horrible things with uranium. Well, you know about that. But I will be meeting the new next prime minister of Canada, and either President Trump or his representative will be there as well. Jeff Bezos agreed to come, and there'll be many others. I know they're coming because I'm there.
That's
And they want to talk
And
to
they
me.
watch the podcast.
I'm sure that they
I
want to
want
talk
to
to me.
discuss it.
Yeah. Now, I just did the July 23rd webinar with Ecuador and Latin America, which actually we had people from Canada to Chile, from Australia to Switzerland,
Well,
the whole world
we always
was
do.
on that webinar, and it was very good. I will be repeating it for only Turkish people, but anybody, it will be also in English, Turkish and
It'll be Turkish English.
But I want to make a statement about something because a lot of people in Turkey have been, I'll just say, pestering me, trying to convince me to return in September, and I'm supposed to return in September. But there are rules and regulations in place that make me a little bit wary about doing that because I could be stopped at the airport, given a false test, and locked away for 2 weeks, and I'm not going to put myself in that position. What do you think, people? What do you think about what I should do? Same thing with Spain. I apparently am being the main speaker at the Ufology World Global Congress in Barcelona. But Barcelona has been locked down again, and EU has banned anyone from the United States, so it doesn't look like I'll be going there. And this was interesting because yesterday I read that falsy Fauci said, oh, I'm 79 years old and I'm not going to get on an airplane because it's very dangerous. You can catch something and I can't see going overseas these days, which tells me that they're spraying things in the airplane cabin to purposely make people sick and include the virus so that you must get the vaccination in order to fly. That's what that tells me. So thank you, Mr. Fauci, for telling us a little secret and revealing that. And so they're probably spraying planes. I don't recommend anybody fly anywhere. Please watch the videos that I posted on my blog. I posted them for a reason. And very importantly, the SMOC Expansion Symposium will take place October 30th to November 1st in Sterling Heights, Michigan. You must be a member of either SMOC or Expansions to attend. And the sign-up links are on the website, so you can sign up. It's pretty straightforward.
Sacred Medical Order, the Knights of Hope.
You must please register to attend the the symposium online. It's going to be absolutely incredible. Information will be revealed which will have never been revealed before. I urge you all.
Get the book. Show them the book because it's in this book.
Yeah, I urge you all to study the 72 names of God. The next 6 weeks are extremely critical, and I will be bringing you information which I am receiving from high sources, and I'm not talking about la extraterrestrial blah blah. I'm talking about high governmental sources. As I receive it, I will be telling you what I can tell you, and I will tell you that something's going on. Very importantly, keep your eye on around August 19th. Until mid-September. I do believe that cube story, that the big gigantic cube that was seen coming out of the sun, I believe it's being a setup for a staged alien invasion, but not by the Democrats. I think President Trump and
Crew.
I was going to say Q, but
Crew.
apparently if you say that, they block you.
No, you can't say against it.
So you already did.
No, I said Q.
So some people are saying QUE.
I said crew.
Yeah,
With a
yeah,
Q.
yeah. And so I think that it's actually a brilliant idea to create a staged alien invasion, because then, guess what? You're not going to wear a mask. You're not going to socially distance when aliens are coming after your butt, okay? And so I think it's brilliant. And then you could stop the election. No more false ballots. I think it's a brilliant idea, and if President Trump and his support system are doing that, I think that's a great idea. I also hope it's my people coming for me. So that's another story.
And I also want to remind you that on my blog, Crossing the Reed Sea, we are exploring the 72 names of God.
Which is extremely, extremely important.
Yes,
right
and that's
now.
why we're doing that right now. So that's why I said we're on there every single day. We have a global audience. We have global memberships.
All names are on
72
this,
names of God
on this
there.
bronze
Yes.
disc.
So we have great information in our books. We're discussing it in our blog. We have our Q&A going on. So if you want to take care of yourself, body, mind, and soul, and all of this time that's going on, we have all the information that can help you. We have tons of free information. In fact, I have a pay-per-view, just as an example. The pay-per-view, $300 to watch it, because that's what it costs when we put the thing on. Actually, more than that to attend our conference. If you're a member, which somebody the other day bought that, who was a member, I saw it go through and I said, I'm giving you back your $300 because you're a member, and because our membership is like less than $1 a day, you get it for free. So she said, great. So we have a lot of deals like that because we only want the serious people.
Right, and there's no time to fool around people. This is really a war.
And I'm going to also tell you, I do believe as well, there are going to be a lot of geological events happening.
Yes, and guess where?
Along the West Coast.
Yes.
And that's why this is happening. This is your chance to get out. Because the democrats are pulling out the demons, and those demons are going to die.
I'm telling you.
And we don't want you, good people out there, to die.
If you live west of the Rocky Mountains, you really need to consider not staying there, because imminently
Yes,
horrible things will happen.
We teach you about mind pattern and how the earth reflects that, and there will be some very bad things happening. So get yourselves out if you can.
And resist the insanity. Be certain of a positive outcome. Be proactive in everything you do. Know your rights. Know the law. Don't be a sheep.
And don't be a victim.
Don't be a victim. Be what you are, a powerful agent of God. And so with that, I will see you in August, I hope. Unless my
Bye.
peeps come, and then I'm leaving.
Goodbye.
Bye.